What is up, players, and welcome to the pod.
Welcome back into TCM Pod. Chris Mathis, Spencer Mathis. Glad to be here with you guys. Once more, we got a lot to get into. Shohei Ohtani in the headlines, not for good reason, too. We'll talk more on that, discuss what we think is going on there with his translator, arguably the biggest and most recognizable athlete on the globe right now in regards to everybody recognizing or knowing who Shohei Ohtani is, from this part of the world to the other part of the world to anywhere and everywhere in between. This guy's the most recognizable athlete in all of sports, in my opinion, right here, right now. And T is in the headlines. If you've missed out on that, we'll have more on that momentarily. But Spence, before we get into that, a lot of football to get into. Sean McDermott and the Buffalo Bills have yet to make a Super Bowl appearance in Josh Allen's 6 seasons in the NFL. And Sean McDermott, according to this report by CBS Sports, calls critics narrow-minded who say that the Bills have not been successful during the Josh Allen era. So a lot of people all recognize that the Super Bowl is the ultimate prize. Some people do dictate a successful season as being a Super Bowl win only. If you didn't win the Super Bowl, you weren't successful that season. For me, I see a little bit of both, but after 3, 4, 5, 6 years of the same thing over and over and over again, that success does kind of tail off. And it's, when will you have your next big run at a title? And that's how you become successful. Because if you top out at a playoff run or even winning the division, winning a couple of playoff games, or whatever the case may be, once you get to the big dance, if you just continue to fall in the AFC title game or not even make it year after year, but never make it to the Super Bowl there in February, at what point is it a successful season? Because after a while, you have to improve. If you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, just as the Bills have done since Josh Allen has been there, you're not having a successful year because you have to improve each and every year. And we've seen that several times throughout all of athletics and professional sports in particular. Coaches at the collegiate level as well, after a certain amount of time, if they don't get the job done, as in winning a championship, you have to move on. I'm here at 95.3 WDAU studios in Tampa, Florida. That's what the Buccaneers did with Tony Dungy when he was the head coach. They moved on because he could only take them so far year after year, never was able to take them to the big game, the Super Bowl, in which they could win a Lombardi trophy. And it feels to me the same way there in Buffalo with the Bills and head coach Sean McDermott. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think that McDermott obviously took his comment a little bit too far towards reporters and the critics about the success of the Buffalo Bills. But honestly, if you're McDermott, the team has had success. They just haven't won a Super Bowl, and they really haven't sniffed one in a couple of years now since that overtime loss to the Chiefs. I think 2 or 3 years ago it's been since then. But again, if you're McDermott, the head coach of the Buffalo Bills, there's really nothing else you could say there. Maybe you could leave out the narrow-minded part, but if he's going up there and saying that they haven't had success in his tenure, that's not a good look on the coach. So I understand what McDermott's saying in that regard, but again, the narrow-minded comment is probably a little bit too much. And like you said, the Buffalo Bills have been a successful regular season team. They've been a successful team in the wild card and somewhat in the divisional, but they have not been able to get past the AFC Championship. And I don't think they're going to get past it anytime soon with the Kansas City Chiefs. And is that a problem with the Buffalo Bills and their team, or is it just Patrick Mahomes ruling the entire AFC like Brady did for all those years with the Patriots? Mahomes is a guy, and right now, if you're trying to do a 1-to-1 comparison for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills so far, I would be so far to venture out and say Phillip Rivers and the San Diego Chargers is kind of the 1-to-1 comparison between those, because those are teams that were good in the regular season. They made the playoffs and never sniffed the Super Bowl. And I think right now that's what we're seeing out of Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. And I wouldn't be too shocked if the Buffalo Bills don't at least make it to the AFC Championship this year. McDermott's out. So he's on the hot seat already. And in that sense, he's on the hot seat with success because that team is so good. They were built to win. Now they're losing pieces. They're losing that window. He's got another year and the clock is ticking. So I think he was kind of put in that situation there. He said what he needed to say. Maybe took a little bit too far, but they've had success. They just haven't won a Super Bowl. And a lot of teams haven't won the Super Bowl. A lot of teams are in the same boat as Josh Allen and the Bills. But again, Josh Allen is a turnover machine. It's hard to win Super Bowls with guys that like to throw a ton of interceptions. And I can't remember the last time I've seen a quarterback that throws 15 interceptions in a season win the Super Bowl. I don't think I've seen that in the last at least 6 years. My recency bias is only going back that far, but I don't think that's been a thing. And Josh Allen is not setting up his team for success whenever it comes down to it. great regular season quarterback, but so far in the playoffs, he hasn't been able to will his team to victory like some of the really upper echelon quarterbacks have been able to do, like Patrick Mahomes and Brady.
Yeah, no question about it. And, maybe a guy you might look to as far as a comparison in terms of being a turnover machine, but still being a really good quarterback and a guy who has the highlight reel plays, has all the potential to win it all. Maybe a Brett Favre would be a guy who reminds you a little bit of Josh Allen. You look at his numbers. He had a season in which he led the league with 29 interceptions in 2005. And then also led the league in 2008 with 22 interceptions, led the league in 1993 with 24 interceptions. But then you look at his touchdown passes, he led the league 3-4 times in touchdown passes throughout his career, including the latest was in 2003, in which he threw 32 touchdown passes. He won, three MVP awards. Also did win a Super Bowl, finished top 5 in MVP voting 7 different times throughout his career. Maybe that's a comparison is Brett Favre in a way, and correct me if you don't think there's any shot of that, but an 11-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro. Look at him. He's a Hall of Famer, of course. He's a guy who was dominant and a one-time Super Bowl winner. I think that kind of is a player who's on board with that as far as looking at Josh Allen and his game in terms of being a turnover machine, but also making the highlight reel plays and still being a proven winner. At a certain point, though, you can only continue to get to the same point of a mountain on the ascend up to get to that Super Bowl ring before the so-called boulder will roll back down upon you. And that's what it feels like with Josh Allen and the Bills. They're 88% there. They get all the way up at the top. They just got to get one last push. And instead they fault themselves, shoot themselves in the foot, and the ball will roll back down on them, the stone will, and then you travel all the way back down the slope to the bottom of the mountain. And it's a redo each and every year. How many years can they continue to do this? And I think you made a great point about Sean McDermott. I think he would be out if they don't at least appear in the Super Bowl this year, because at some point you have to recognize this guy hasn't done it yet. We've had such a good roster. We've continued to build the roster and get better each and every year in terms of roster and talent, but we're not winning we're not even getting to the big game. And they did fire their offensive coordinator midway through the season and Joe Brady. And after that, the Bills offense did improve a good bit, but who's next? That was I'm forgetting, is it the fallback, the fault guy? There's a word here that's used in sport.
Guy.
The fall guy, and that was Joe Brady last year. Who's the guy this year? They just got a new offensive coordinator. They moved him into that position after they fired Joe Brady. Now the Bills are without Gabe Davis, Tre'Davious White, Jordan Poyer, and others. And, you look at Sean McDermott and what the Bills have at hand. You look at the gauntlet of the AFC teams as well. It's scary. And he says that their goal, of course, is still to win the Super Bowl. But, this team has never won a Super Bowl in franchise history. The last appearance they had was in 1993. And that was where they had 4 straight Super Bowl appearances and lost every single one dating back to 1989. So, they have to figure something out. And Josh Allen, he's 27. He's turning 28 in May. So that's not old by any means, but keep it relative and in calm to other players. Look at a guy as in Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield, it doesn't feel like he's 28, but he's just a year older than Josh Allen. And to me, it feels like Baker Mayfield should be a good bit older because, he's been kind of taken away and put in the back seat in the NFL the last couple of years until last season, his first year in Tampa Bay. So for me, I think it is boom or bust for Sean McDermott this year as head coach of the Buffalo Bills. And you make a good point. Teams are still successful relative to what happens throughout the season. Injuries, the firing to the offensive coordinator that they dealt with, that's big. That does kind of hinder what you're capable of doing, just like the Bills had to deal with last year. But at a certain point of making it so far into the playoffs, knowing the gauntlet of quarterbacks in the AFC, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, I'm not saying Tua is great, but his team's really good, and Tua can at least get to the playoffs. Tua Tagovailoa as well. You got Justin Herbert, who will be on the rise this year with Jim Harbaugh as head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. And the list goes on. There's so many great quarterbacks there in the AFC that Patrick Mahomes, can't forget about him. Guys that can really be opposing. A guy in C.J. Stroud in Houston with the Texans. He can also be a guy who makes another push here this year. And before you know it, if they don't get it done in the next 2 years, I think this window might be closing on Josh Allen and the Bills. And not for him to have incredible seasons statistically, but for him to make a true Super Bowl and championship run, Spence.
Yeah, I think the window is already on the closing right now for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. But again, the comparison with Brett Favre and Josh Allen, I think, is a good one. Obviously, Josh Allen's a lot more talented running the football, but the turnovers are something that he really needs to get in check. A couple of years ago, it seemed like he was kind of getting there. Last season, again, the turnovers were back. The defense isn't as good as it was a couple of years ago either. They just lost Jordan Poyer. They lost Tre'Davious White. They're going to have to roll out a lot of new guys on that defense this year. Probably their first overall pick is going to be a defensive end or a cornerback because they overpaid Von Miller so much just 2 years ago, and he did not produce whatever. The only thing he produced was a charge against him for domestic violence. So
Yeah.
he's still on the team. He's taken a restructure. People were excited about that. But again, what has Von Miller done for the Buffalo Bills so far besides get injured, miss a lot of games, and then get that bad news out to Buffalo? They lost Poyer. He was a great safety for them for the last 5 years. They're going to have to get some new guys, and Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills have at least got to make the AFC Championship this year. I think it's doable. I think the AFC is of course, a tough conference, but again, it's tough to win back to back to back. That could go against the Kansas City Chiefs this year because no one's done it. So are the Kansas City Chiefs going to be the team to do it? A team that really kind of relies on a 35, 36-year-old tight end. Patrick Mahomes is the guy, but he does seem to get injured right before the playoffs quite a lot. Could one big injury hinder the Kansas City Chiefs from doing that and allow a window for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills? I think so. And I think Josh Allen will limit his turnovers a little bit. But I think another big thing to look at is the relationship between Stephon Diggs and the Buffalo Bills, because it seems like every time you open up, every time you look at X, the news on X, the news that are coming out from the analysts, it seems like Stephon Diggs is wanting to get traded for the last 2 years. It's like they're kind of giving some recommendations for what you could get out of Stephon Diggs. Does he really want to go? Does he want to stay? His body language on the field shows that he doesn't want to stay. And I think there's something to that. I don't think the connection between Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs is as good as they would have hoped whenever they signed Diggs 2 or 3 years ago. Now it's been that he's been playing with Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. So there's a lot of things going around the Buffalo Bills right now. And do I think McDermott's the head coach to get him over the hump and get them to the Super Bowl? I don't believe so. I think Allen's a good quarterback, but the thing with Brett Favre is he won his Super Bowl in his first couple of years in the NFL. Josh Allen's been in the league for 6 years now. He's got to win a Super Bowl before his next contract, or if he doesn't have a couple of good seasons in a row, will he be in Buffalo in 2 or 3 years? We don't know. He's got to really string some stuff together. A great quarterback, but he hasn't been able to get over the hump, and that's what keeps the great quarterbacks away from the top upper echelon quarterbacks. He's a great quarterback in the NFL because there's 32 of them. He can run the football well. He can throw the ball 70 yards down the field, but the turnovers are just so boneheaded, and that's what gets you out of the league and gets you to new teams every once in a while whenever you're an NFL quarterback. And I think Allen's going to get that done this year, but I don't think the Buffalo Bills are going to be on the same level again because that defense is losing a lot of pieces, and I don't think McDermott is that good of a head coach. I really don't.
Yeah, you look at the Bills and their success since Josh Allen, who was a draft pick there in 2018. They missed out on the playoffs his first year, but since then, they've won the division 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of his, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 of his 5 years since his rookie year. And they've been first place. They've won the division 1, 2, 3, 4 times, 4 consecutive years. However, you look at their playoff success. In 19, they lost the wild card. In 2020, they lost the conference. In 2021, 2022, and 2023, they lost the divisional round of the playoffs. At a certain point, you know what's next? They have to get over the hump there. And the numbers as far as points forced offensively have gone down every year since 2020. Every year they've trickled their way down, including this past year, 2023. And points allowed was at a high, the highest it's been in the last 4 years this past season. So a lot of different things that are stacking into this and stacking the Buffalo Bills in regards to what this team can accomplish under Sean McDermott. And at what point does the team just think, hey, this guy is not it. This is not the guy to push us over the top there to win the Super Bowl as head coach of our football program. Now, of course, Josh Allen is that guy. I think Josh Allen will win a Super Bowl. I don't know if and when. I don't know when it will happen. It will happen. It's just a matter of when. And with who? Will it be with the Buffalo Bills? You talk about when he has to get cashed out and receive that bag here in the next couple of years. They can't help out with the rest of the roster. They're going to have to draft really, really good here the next couple of years and have those guys under rookie contracts just for them to be able to succeed and for them to win a big game Otherwise, they're going to be strapped salary cap hell there in Buffalo. Now, another guy I want to talk about was Devin White, and the national media continues to diss on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Spencer. I saw on social media 2 different posts, one for sure from the NFL in which they posted this and mentioned Lavonte David. If you're watching or listening to us, you can see it on Spotify and YouTube, but they posted a photo of the Buccaneers huddle before a game this year, and it was Devin White in the middle after the news came out this week of Lavonte David's press conference. I actually spoke with Lavonte David on the J&Z show at 95.3 WDAE earlier this week with Zach Blobner, and the NFL posted something of what I believe it was Jason Light or Todd Bowles had said about Lavonte David, but they throw up this photo of Devin White, who's no longer a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. And in addition to that, there was also another tweet, Spencer, that you had shared from the NFL. I believe it was the NFL account that showed Devin White as, no, it was rookie Kalijah Kancey. And that was from around the NFL. It said general manager Jason Light, Lavonte David is the standard of what the Buccaneers look for in a player. And it was Kalijah Kancey, a rookie, as the photo. Then I see on NFL today in their Twitter, they post this photo I'm showing up now on the screen of Devin White when talking about Lavonte David. So first and foremost, some disrespect there. It does take, and I understand that not everybody knows football there. There's a social media team. It's not necessarily a shot at the Buccaneers, but it's a shot at, hey, I bet if this were the Buffalo Bills or the Kansas City Chiefs or a hot team like the Houston Texans or maybe even Atlanta with the Kirk Cousins signing, they would have double-checked their work to realize that that's not 54, that's 45, and that's 94, not 54 in the photos when talking about Lavonte David and his huge contract. And it just goes to show you Lavonte David's been underrated and underappreciated across the world since his rookie year. He's been underappreciated since 2012.
Yeah, I don't even know how you make that mistake. Especially with around the NFL, they've been doing it. I think 3 out of the 4 last posts about the Buccaneers have been the wrong guy, and mistaking Kalijah Kancey for Lavonte David, I think, is the biggest mistake out of these ones. Again, it doesn't make much sense, but Devin White and the news about him coming out, the guy is a receiver in a linebacker's body, and I don't mean that like he plays linebacker as a receiver. He acts like a diva wide receiver. The guy demands more money than what he's worth. He doesn't put out a good product out there. And Philadelphia Eagles fans will learn here pretty quickly. They were looking for a coverage linebacker in this year's free agency. Guess what? They did not get a coverage linebacker. They got a guy that can blitz up the middle, and he can get burned by every single tight end in the NFL. He's good for 1 or 2 interceptions per season. Usually they go right directly to him because he's not great in coverage. He continuously misses assignments. Missed that 1 tackle this year on Gardner Minshew at the goal line that lost the Buccaneers the game to the Indianapolis Colts. That was unbelievable. And the guy's just not a good linebacker, and I'm happy the Buccaneers let him walk. It looked like a little bit on his social media that, hey, he was going to try and stay whenever we signed Jordan Whitehead. Happy to see the Philadelphia Eagles have purged him away. I mean, even if you look down at the comments on the NFL post, Eagles fans are like, Buccaneers fans, is this guy any good? Is he going to be great on the Philadelphia Eagles? And they're like, this guy can't cover. He can get 5 sacks a year. If you blitz him up the middle, he can get 1 interception, but he's going to miss the most tackles in the NFL. He's kind of like Quan Alexander reincarnated.
Yeah, it's frustrating because this was the difference between him and Quan Alexander is Devin White was a top 5 draft pick in his NFL draft, which when you think about it, it's kind of unsettling really to draft a linebacker, in my opinion, that high, number 1, but then for him to have an incredible year in 2020, which looking back at it, with my mind and my recollection of that year, he really was just incredible near the end of the regular season, heading into the postseason. He turned it up a notch, and he was one of those guys that not only looked to be the next face of this Buccaneer defense, but also looked to be potentially the face of the NFL eventually. Like he could be one of those top 5 defensive players in the league. That was the potential I saw after that 2020 season. I'm thinking, hey, in 4 or 5 years, this guy could be that dude. And instead, every year since then, a slow decline. And yes, there were some injuries along the way, but for me, it's more so of the decline in regards to social media and the fact that he was always talking. Last year ahead of training camp, he was requesting a trade from the Buccaneers, which made absolutely 0 sense whatsoever. He didn't get the trade request that he wanted. They did not grant him that in Tampa Bay, and I'm glad for that because I think that his value would have been much higher, and I think that somebody might have cashed out. However, I did not want him on the team last year, and after he got benched and KJ Britt was replaced, in his spot. KJ looked really good. And granted, it was only for 3 or 4 games, but he still looked really, really good. I love that. I'm thinking, hey, that's the new guy. Do not pay Devin White. I know he didn't get the bag that he wanted, the $100 million contract that he thought he was capable of receiving, but at least a little bit over a year ago. But he still got paid, and initially it was a little bit over $7 million guaranteed, I believe. And I was like, wow, who would pay this man $7 million and some change guaranteed? When in reality, it was about 3 to 4 with some incentives up to $7 million. So he took to Twitter on Friday, I believe it was, and mentioned that he had, talked about people wanting to jeopardize his character so bad when he's not benefiting them anymore. He said, #focus on the future with a green eagle heart emoji. Then, and for that not locker room talk, 4-time captain out of the 5 years, they don't give him away. And I quote, hard work and leadership. Every guy in the locker room was a blessing to me in some sort of way. And I know I can say vice versa, which, all right, that's kind of cocky considering you just got not re-signed by that team because of your actions, whether it be on or off the field. And then he said, have a blessed day with, again, another green emoji. This is like being in a new relationship, but tweeting about your ex publicly and talking about, hey, there were still some good things in that relationship. I know we've moved on, but it shows that he really hasn't moved on. And I think he realizes that, hey, the grass isn't even always greener on the other side. Even though the Eagles are a green football team, they've got in their bird logo, it doesn't mean it's always greener on the other side. And, if Devin White does what he does here in Philadelphia, as he did it here in Tampa Bay the last couple of years, he's going to get ran out of Philadelphia really quick, especially considering it's a 1-year prove-it deal. And what's neat is our guy Patrick Johnson will be in that locker room with Devin White. So maybe we can hear from Patrick Johnson in a couple of weeks and talk about how he feels about this without getting, him in a weird spot, but at least knowing what it's like, how he views Devin White, because he was regarded as one of the best linebackers in the league back in 2020 and slowly just ran off the hill.
Yeah, it's Devin White's an interesting case, and it seems to be pretty common with linebackers in which he had that really good 2020 run, and I don't think if the Buccaneers didn't have him that year, I don't think they're a Super Bowl winning team. I think that he was definitely the deciding factor, and I think the Buccaneers are fine with taking that out of this entire deal. Obviously, they drafted him too high in 2019. He was good his first 2 years. Even his third year, he was pretty good. But the last 2 years in Tampa, they needed to move on. They finally move on. I think both teams are going to benefit from this because KJ Britt at this point is the better fit in Tampa Bay than Devin White was. Devin White gets a new place to go to. I think it'll work out a little bit better for him in his favor with Philadelphia than it did last year with the Buccaneers, just because obviously there was something going on, at least with the coach in Devin White, because he got benched last season. He's also a guy that can't stay off Twitter. And if you're in the NFL and you can't stay off Twitter, bad things are going to happen. You're going to let the negative thoughts creep into your mind. You're going to try and show out. You're going to miss assignments. You're going to miss things because you're trying to show out for the doubters, for the haters. And that's what we've seen out of Devin White so far in his career. I thank him for his 2020 Super Bowl run. I think that was one of the greatest linebacker performances in a 4-game stretch in history. Very good, but the Buccaneers needed to move on. They didn't have to pay him any more money, and they let him go out the door for free. So good time in Tampa for those first 2 years. The last 3 have been pretty poor, but again, not a bad thing to move on from a linebacker and give him somewhere else to go, because obviously he's not going to be a top 10 linebacker in the NFL in his career, but he will get a new change of scenery. I think he'll be pretty good with the Philadelphia Eagles next year, but you're going to see a lot of tweets about him in coverage. And if they can get back to the playoffs, because that team has kind of fell apart so far in the offseason, they've added a couple of pieces, but if they do end up trading away Josh Sweat as their defensive end, they've already lost Jason Kelsey. Of course, they did add Saquon Barkley, which is going to be a very interesting thing for Philadelphia. They're going to be a playoff team, but we'll see. Well, I think we're going to see a lot of tweets come mid-January about Devin White. I don't think they're going to be good tweets there in Philadelphia.
Yeah, no doubt about it, and it will be interesting to see. Now, I did forward the message of Devin White's initial contract to our guy, Trenton, who's a diehard Eagle fan, and I think that his response, and Trenton, I know you're going to call me out on this, but it felt a little like there was some self-defense there, like, hey, you know what, it's a gamble, but he did mention the fact that they do have a little bit of money left, so I forgot what the official, he said, and I quote, I'm fine with it being a 1-year deal. We still have like $20 million left. That's what he said when I sent the Devin White contract talk to him. So we'll see how that all pans out. Yes, it is cheap, but at the end of the day, will it pan out? I think it could be more of a problem there in the locker room, as the locker room already had issues in Philadelphia last year. Now you add more. you stirring up the pot even more. That's why I could see Nick Sirianni getting fired this year at some point.
Easily.
I really could. If it didn't happen last year, which it did not, I think it will definitely happen this year. And adding Devin White to that mix is like adding fire to gasoline. It's not going to be, or vice versa, gasoline to fire. It's not going to be a good mixture there in Philadelphia. Now, I'm pulling for Devin to fix it, to figure it out, because
I'm not.
You're not.
No.
Why not?
I don't like the Eagles. I don't like their fan base. I don't like the team. I don't like Jalen Hurts. I don't like their head coach. I don't like anything about Philadelphia.
Well, there you go. Write it down. He said that today. It is March.
I don't think
24th.
anybody outside of the Philadelphia Eagles and their fan base like the Philadelphia Eagles and the city itself.
There's no argument there. I mean, I'm not saying I'm an Eagles fan, but I would like to see Devin White turn it around because he is so talented. It's just he's not very mature. Something just doesn't click with him. I don't know what it is, but something just does not click. 25 years old, he's my age, and I click a little bit better than he does. So I'm not saying I'm nearly as talented as he is, by no means, especially on a football field, but there's just something not clicking for him. So hopefully he'll figure that out. His agent and his people have to be closer with him and trying to get, because Philadelphia, it's a different breed up there, man. It really is. And then we got the Ohtani gambling scandal that's going on with his interpreter, which this is by far the biggest story in all of sports right now. Shohei Ohtani, we talked about it a few moments ago briefly, the biggest and most recognizable athlete in the world right now across the globe, is in some serious trouble. At least it looks to be that way, as his interpreter, who had been his interpreter since he got to the major leagues, got in trouble with some kind. Spence, take it away, man.
Yeah, so his interpreter was kind of pinned for losing $4.5 million of Shohei Ohtani's money. Not sure how the interpreter has access to Ohtani's bank funds in the first place. If you ask me, I think that's where the first part of this story is a little bit shady. A lot of MLB fans are defending Ohtani and going at this interpreter's neck. But again, like you said earlier, there's a fall guy in everything. And when you're as big of an athlete as Shohei Ohtani is, if he gets in trouble for gambling and it's an actual thing, he's out of the MLB. And there's nothing they could do about it, because right now the FBI is investigating this. And if they link Shohei Ohtani to actually gambling, this could be at least a 2-year suspension, if not forever suspension. Obviously, they gave Pete Rose the forever suspension. I think that we're kind of a little bit further into the betting world that we're in right now, because it's interesting that we're not seeing this a little bit more commonly. $4.5 million in losses is a huge amount. So if it's Ohtani or his interpreter, regardless of who it is, they absolutely suck at betting on sports, and they need to hang it up. They need to seek some help, because $4.5 million of losses is absolutely incredible. But they found Ohtani on 2 separate bank statements, losing a combined $4.5 million. Of course, it was linked to his interpreter. Some people think that maybe his interpreter was the one placing bets for Ohtani under the interpreter's name. But of course, it's going to be linked to the guy that just got how much was his contract? $700 million.
Oh, yeah, he got cashed out.
So it's going to obviously be linked to Shohei Ohtani. But again, it's a weird thing right now with Ohtani as an interpreter, because there's some things that are coming out of how Ohtani's interpreter said that he graduated from a college back in 2007. SportsCenter tweeted out yesterday that there's absolutely no piece of paperwork that shows that he actually even attended that college. So some weird things happening between those two right now. But in my personal opinion, I think that it wouldn't be a far-fetched thing that if Ohtani were to bet on sports games. Obviously, they're saying it wasn't MLB games, which will help him a little bit if he does get suspended for this, like Calvin Ridley did a couple of years ago in the NFL. But this is a big difference between Calvin Ridley in the NFL and Shohei Ohtani in Major League Baseball, because he's the main face of baseball right now, and the MLB cannot afford that. So I think that's why we're seeing a lot of things that are going towards Ohtani's case here, saying this interpreter has lost $4.5 million from Ohtani. He stole the money somehow. Again, it's not clicking to me how he had access to $4.5 million of a $700 million man in Shohei Ohtani. So some weird things going on. I do believe that this guy is the fall guy. I'm not going to bother pronouncing his name. I wouldn't want to try that and be completely wrong. So I believe the interpreter here is the fall guy for Shohei Ohtani. I believe Shohei Ohtani placed the bets. And, as Tampa Bay Ray fans last year, we saw what happened to Wander Franco. We felt the pain. I woke up one morning, saw a TikTok about it, thought it was a joke, thought it was something fake. We saw what he did. He's out of the Major League Baseball forever. The Dodgers, I think, are suffering from too much success. So would I be upset to see Ohtani get suspended? As a Tampa Bay Ray fan, I don't think so. I think that they've got too much money invested in their team. Share some of that money, lose some of that money. Ohtani can be suspended for a couple of years. It's also in his contract that if his interpreter gets fired, Ohtani can finish his contract with the Dodgers after 1 year. So he could be out of Los Angeles next year if he wants to be. With all this news coming out, I don't know if he would still be in Major League Baseball, but he could go to a different team if he wants to. I don't really see a relation in that. I don't know why that's in the contract in the first place. I found that very interesting to read. But again, we'll see what ends up with Shohei Ohtani. But as an absolute hater, as somebody that wants other people to suffer what we've been through in the baseball world with the Tampa Bay Rays, losing World Series to the Dodger back in 2020, losing Wander Franco, a generational shortstop forever. Would I be upset to see the most generational player in all of sports right now be suspended for a couple of years as a Rays fan? I don't think so. This is Rays blue, not Dodgers blue, in case you were wondering. So if Ohtani gets suspended, it's a cool story, and hey, we'll get another documentary out of it like we got with Brady and the Patriots. I think it'll be something fun to watch. Obviously, already this is going to be made into a documentary because it's absolutely insane. It'll be fun to see how this turns out for the interpreter and Shohei Ohtani himself, because it's a very, very bizarre story. It's getting a lot of coverage, but since it happened 4 days ago, I don't think it's being spoke about or at least tweeted about as much as I would have suspected, because this is the biggest scandal in sports in some time now. This is so much bigger than Calvin Ridley, so much bigger than what we saw in the past with some of these sports bettors. But can you blame the players at this point? Look at every single advertisement that we're seeing in all of sports. I mean, college players are getting the same email right now through March Madness. Even Division II players. This was a chain sent by Young Harris that I work with. If they bet anything as much as a meal, they can lose their scholarship. So with how much that sports betting is kind of being advertised to everybody, it's absolutely insane. You'll go on SportsCenter, it's a sports betting segment that they have. I think it's unbelievable, and I think that we're going to see more and more players get in trouble for this. I do believe Shohei Ohtani will get in trouble for this, and I think that this suspension is going to be the basis for what we see in the future. NFL players will continue to get in trouble for this. It's going to just get worse and worse. The biggest college player within the next 5 years, I believe, will get in trouble for sports gambling and betting. And of course, the suspensions are going to get less and less as that goes on. But this Ohtani thing could be the basis for how they're going to deal with this in the future, because this is the GOAT right now in Major League Baseball. He's already surpassed his teammate with the Angels, and Mike Trout made him kind of a secondary with the team that he was in. He's already made Mookie Betts the second best player on the Dodgers. He's the greatest player that we've seen in Major League Baseball, I think, since we've been around watching baseball since I was born in 2001. You were born in 1998. He's the most interesting guy to watch. He's a generational player, and I honestly, I love Shohei Ohtani. I love to watch him play, but I would like to see that this is actually him doing the sports betting, and I would love to see how Major League Baseball handles this, because it would be so interesting. It's going to be a great documentary. And I kind of feel bad for the fall guy right now if he's actually not the guy that somehow had access to $4.5 million and stole it from Shohei Ohtani. Then they were joking in the dugout a day after that happened. Is it the truth? I don't think so. We'll see how this pans out. But again, I kind of want it to play out in a bad way so we can see how they handle it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at his interpreter who declined to tell ESPN the full amount of money he lost gambling, but he did confirm it was at least
Did you see that?
$4.5 million.
Exchange? An ESPN analyst was their interview with this guy was just texting him. So they said, did Shohei Ohtani offer you a sum of money to say that you stole the money? He said no. Are you sure Shohei Ohtani is not paying you off and making you the fall guy? He responded no. He said, and then the next question is, did Shohei Ohtani have any influence on your gambling behavior with his money? He said no. Then they said, do you work in cooperation with Shohei Ohtani in gambling? No response. Those are the 4 questions they asked him. They got 3 no's with a period and nothing else after that. Ohtani talks to the media on Monday afternoon, so definitely stay tuned for that. We'll have the news for that on the next podcast. We may have to do a podcast a little bit earlier, depending next week on how this pans out. So it's going to be an interesting couple of days. It's also opening week for baseball on Thursday. Obviously, the Dodgers have already played 2 games. That's probably the worst rollout of an opening day that I think I've ever seen. I don't care that you played in Korea. You should have waited until early this week. On Monday, they should have played. Instead, this happens. The scandal comes out. it's a bad time for Major League Baseball right now, especially coming into opening week. I'm sure that Rob Manfred's back is against the wall right now. He's worried. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do. But again, baseball starts on Thursday for the Tampa Bay Rays. It's going to be a good season. It'll be interesting, and hopefully the Rays can make a push this year, and maybe that Braves Rays World Series will finally come to fruition here near Atlanta.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Thursday is the big day. It's Rays opening day. I'm going to be there in attendance. It'll be the first ever edition of The Drive with T. Kraz here at 95.3 WDAE. So I'll be the executive producer there at iHeartRadio Tampa Bay. Excited for that. Excited for opening day. And I love the pitch clock as well. Games just fly by so much faster. I love baseball, but it's so much more entertaining when these games go by as they do, especially when you have 162 of them throughout the regular season, not including the postseason or the World Series. The thing with the games that already started off the Major League Baseball season, Major League Baseball did a poor job of advertising that and publicizing that. And for it to be as early as it was, it made absolutely zero sense here in the States whatsoever. So imagine if you lived out on the West Coast, no reasoning whatsoever. Dodger fans couldn't even wake up on time to watch that. It was a joke.
Yeah, I honestly had no clue that that was opening day. Like, I didn't see anything about that on Twitter, on anything. I had to ask a content creator that I watch play MLB The Show. I said, "Is this the first game of the actual MLB season?" He said, "Believe it or not, yes, it is." It's just an unbelievable thing that wasn't even, I don't even think I saw an advertisement on TV for the Sale series. I think that was unbelievable by the MLB, and probably the worst rollout that we're ever going to see in terms of a sports season starting in history. I don't think it can get worse from that because teams still thought, fans still thought it was spring training. I loaded up the MLB stats or the MLB app to look at the stats from that game. All of the spring training stats were still synced to the actual game that was being played. So I thought that it was still spring training until about the fifth inning whenever I asked the question. So terrible rollout for the MLB this year. Hopefully it gets better this week with actual opening day happening. I don't even know if they even had opening day on the field anywhere there in Korea. But again, it was two good games. The first game ended with the first baseman's glove breaking. The second game ended, I think, 28 combined runs between the two teams, and the Padres won. So very interesting rollout for the MLB season. A lot of news coming up this week, a lot of big things to talk about. We're going to get to shift our focus from the NFL to the MLB for about 2 weeks before the MLB loses the buzz, and we get to the parts of the season where, hey, we have 140 games, see what happens, and then we'll come back and get to you in September to see how the season has panned out with Major League Baseball. That's kind of how it works. At least it's more interesting than the NBA regular season. So that's something. And again, NHL is winding down. The playoffs for NHL are the best in any sport. So if you're not an NHL fan, definitely recommend watching those whenever those start up in about a month from now. But Major League Baseball is starting, and I think that it's a very fun rollout for every single season. You always have a lot of hope because you see there's so many more games than any other sport. And out of this sport, I think that the underdog has the best chance of winning or at least making the playoffs in any other sport that there is, because in the NBA, you're not going to make it unless you have a superstar. In the NFL, you have to have a good quarterback to make it to the playoffs. In the NHL, you have to have some really high-tier goal scorers because the upper echelon teams are so much better than the bottom. In the MLB last year, guess who was in the World Series? The Arizona Diamondbacks. So that kind of tells you all you need to know about Major League Baseball. You can make it. Your team can make it. There's at least a little bit of hope out of there. And I equate it to the NFL draft in terms of hype. Opening day is equivalent to the NFL draft. Not as important, though, as the NFL regular season or the playoffs or anything. But again, it's always fun to watch opening day and opening week, and then you kind of lose your buzz for a little bit. But Major League Baseball is in some hot water right now. Shohei Ohtani in some hot water. The interpreter, I don't know if he knows what's going on right now. He definitely just got paid $50 million.
Take some more money.
Yeah, I would assume in about a year we're going to see $50 million mistakenly disappeared from Shohei Ohtani's bank account 1 year ago today. And we'll see that the interpreter was paid off even more to take the blame, because all he has to lose is his job and get tons of money from Shohei Ohtani wiring him if he can just stay low and take the blame.
Now, 3 months ago today, roughly today, 3 months ago, we put out a video talking about Shohei Ohtani's contract, and we called it bad for Major League Baseball. All of this that's going on right now with Shohei Ohtani is bad for Major League Baseball. So it's weird how things kind of line, and that contract he took was a weird one. So we'll see if there's any correlation there with the money and the contract he did sign there with the Dodgers. As always, thank you guys for tuning in to TCM Pod. At L Savage Spence on Twitter, at the Chris Mathis on Twitter. Go hit follow, subscribe, whatever the case may be. Like this video, comment your belief down below. Is Shohei Ohtani guilty? Is his translator the fallback guy? Who's at fault here? What's your expectation for how this plays out? Will he be suspended, and for how long? Let us know down below. Thank you guys for tuning in.